Welcome to Own It, Your Business in Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Morning.
Well, welcome back, Judith, for another episode in the same week.
Yeah, only 3 days since I spoke to you, Nicola.
Yeah, we're going to have to really come up with some exciting stuff for what we've been up to those 3 days.
Well, I'm going to talk about the fact that Manchester has been the target of the terrorist attack.
Okay.
Because I'm very fond of Manchester. I've worked there and I have a lifelong close friend that lives there, and several of my clients live there. And I am an honorary northerner, and I absolutely love the bones of Manchester. And many people that you and I like and admire in private and in public are Manx.
Yeah.
And Manchester has suffered disproportionately, as has London actually, but Manchester has suffered disproportionately at the hands of the people blowing people up. You won't be surprised to know that although I'd heard of Ariana Grande, I didn't really know who she was, but it seems that the age of the attendees of this gig was on the young side, which makes it even more of a brutal thing, I think.
Yeah.
One of my clients was out of town and rushed back to the north because all of her friends have 10-year-old daughters now. They're all safe, which is great, but it's worrying, isn't it? And it feels Manchester's not an enormous city, it feels close. And I emailed my friend there and she said, "It is awful here." That was her reply.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you there's no way you can question what's going through people's minds because they are quite obviously mentally unwell.
Well, certainly, I don't know what it means or how it would feel to be some kind of zealot or a person who allows oneself to be convinced that
killing 10-year-olds is a good idea.
Well, that this is a righteous and heroic thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's. I can only think that because my brain is not quite as mad as most people think it is. Is that something happens in the brain chemistry, when you are completely brainwashed into believing something so ferociously that you'd kill yourself. I think. Yeah, you've tipped over, haven't you, from being a hero, like, the people who sort of ride into battle and save countries and things, into being, someone who would kill multiple other people. I think that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? And
it's quite a fine line if you think about it, because as you were working your way up to that sentence, I thought, well, actually, what's the difference between being prepared to go over the top, where in, say, the First World War, that meant almost certain death, and in certain other war situations that means almost certain death, and your certain death is in the framework of you having it in your mind to kill as many of the other guys, although of course they're all in uniform and all trained for it, aren't they? I mean, there is a huge
difference between war situations and what's happening here. I mean, when you think, I think of some of the greatest heroes of all time. They were pitted against a finite number of people who they disagreed with fundamentally, but they weren't going out to mass kill a load of people who didn't have a clue what was coming and who would.
Yeah, well, I think there are civilian casualties of war, but generally speaking, all parties try to avoid that, don't we? Except in these types of situations, and in this case, okay, the man killed himself but took out another 25, 30 Mancunians, but apparently bombs of this nature are strapped to very small children as well. And they don't know what they're doing. This guy might have known what he was doing, but children don't know what they're doing.
No, they don't. And it's just baffling, isn't it?
It's baffling. I think that's the thing. So in 3 days, I had to stay off social media on Tuesday altogether because I couldn't bear it. I'm too fragile for the news these days, Nicola.
Yeah, I can understand that. I really can. I mean, I've completely refrained from commenting or saying anything and
Yeah, well, I think that's the best way. I honestly think that's the best way, because how can we possibly know?
Yeah, I just, it's not that I don't care. It's just that I just like you. I don't want to be poisoned by all the. I've had enough grief, thank you very much, in the last 2 years. I don't really need any more.
Also, I think it's very, very difficult to put your foot in it, isn't it, and offend people.
Yes.
Because we don't know how we would feel in that situation. We think we do, but we don't. So it's easy to look both self-seeking and to offend people accidentally, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the things I quite enjoyed seeing are just people quietly saying how sorry they are about it all, and that leaving it at that. That's all.
Yes.
That's all you need to do, really, isn't it? Feel you do something.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, on a happier note...
Yes, good.
I went to Cribbage and Moussaka Club.
Yes, how did it go?
Oh, it was great fun. First of all, the moussaka was freshly baked that morning. It was absolutely delicious. Moussaka isn't normally my favourite thing because of that wobbly bechamel stuff on top. But it was so deliciously cooked, and it was just firm, just firm enough for me to be able to cope with it.
And if I were going to pick something out of moussaka, it would be the slightly slimy aubergines.
Oh, yeah, see, I don't mind those.
I'm happier with the bechamel, although I like it English-style runny rather than egg custard style.
Oh, right. Well, I prefer it a bit harder baked with a crispy top on.
Yeah.
Cribbage, now, that's an interesting game. Whoever thought that one up had a twisted mind, because there are so many little variables on it and so many different rules. It must have evolved over time, I think, to become more complicated. But I managed to grasp enough of the basics that my partner and I, who is a very kind man who has cooked dinner for us before, so he knows what I'm like, were able to limp in behind the leaders, not too badly. And it was great fun. But now it's finished for the summer, unfortunately. In fact, everything for the summer. Right Club's coming to an end shortly.
Okay.
Because for July and August, you can't get anyone in the venues because they're so jam-rammed.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, obviously, it's just too hot to do anything, apparently, in the daytime.
Are there any other things, not in the summer, but is it cribbage or right club, or is there anything else you can do as well?
Oh, no, there's loads more. There's Stitch and Bitch, which is where you can go and crochet and knit and talk. And apparently that's very international. Even people who can't speak, English come to that. So
can you go to that if you don't stitch or knit? I don't know either of those, but I wouldn't mind a little chatting.
Well, no, of course you can. They welcome anyone to everything. There's also Stonnon Link, which is a lady up in near Horey, the village up the road, that organises quite a lot of classical and jazz and all other kinds of music, folk music things. There's the Cardamili Jazz Festival, which I'm going to try and get Heather and David Newton in on next year, which is run by some Swedes, and they organise that. What else is there? Oh, there's a monthly Pefco Bazaar, which is a bazaar at Pefco restaurant, which is in aid of the Yaya, apparently it's pronounced, Yaya, who help with all sorts of things. It's organised by, pretty much, I think, by a lady who runs a website called Piraeus de Mani, which means all living happily together in the Marnie. And they do lots of good works, things like dogs get abandoned or kittens are found, or the ambulance. Well, they're having a big ambulance fundraiser at the moment. I won't go into the details, but suffice to say the Greek government is being particularly awkward on a taxation issue, and that's meaning they're having to quickly raise another €6,000. So they're swinging into action with English tea afternoons and all sorts of things like that. So there's loads.
What can you buy at the bazaar?
All sorts of things: arts, crafts, food. The sausage man comes from somewhere else, and you could buy bacon and sausages. So he's on his hand-reared pigs.
Yeah.
Nice. People sew, people knit. It's handicraft city really around here. It's just things are just springing into mind as I'm talking. There's the Amateur Dramatic Society. I can't remember what they're called now, but Sarah reckons I'll be in that, but before the year's out.
Well, I nearly said that you're not tempted. Yeah.
No, because I can't remember one line from walking from the kitchen to the bathroom. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been quite a nice week. I've had my hair done, so I went and had a right old laugh with my hairdressers because she has suddenly gone all gothic on me, and she's literally purple lipstick, black hair. She was clad in head to foot in black lace with very high heels. I was most impressed she was hairdressing in those heels. I've got I don't know if I've told you, but I have to move out for 3 days next week just because the house was already booked for that time. And Stella, my friend, has found me a little apartment over the souvlaki shop on the seafront.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be right in the thick of things for 3 days, which will be rather nice.
Yes.
They assure me that the souvlaki shop has broadband. I'm not.
It's only 3 days, Nicola. We've done 3 days recently without broadband, but it's slightly worrying. You would have to walk to 7,500 steps, wasn't it?
Well, only just for 3 days. No.
Yeah. It's staggering next door.
I'll swim instead. I'll walk to Clombia Beach and swim instead.
Okay.
So that's my week. What's fueled your fire then?
Yeah, well, in keeping with today's client challenge of the week, writers and writing, I'm reading a lot at the moment, fiction and memoir, and I'm thinking about how and where and what I want to write. I'm pretty sure it's not a book. And I had this genius idea of recording audios of my blog posts. Do you remember that year I wrote 365 blog posts?
Yes.
I went to have a look and thought, right, how should I do this? Oh, I know. I'll start on the same date as it is today, which was yesterday, the 20-something of May. And the one that day wasn't really good. So I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll do the one on the 1st of January and start from, no, that wasn't good either. So I abandoned that idea yesterday. But I think actually it'll probably be mostly either on my Facebook page or a Facebook note with one of these messages at the bottom that I see everybody doing now, a sort of click to action or click to talk to Judith type of thing. I don't know. So writers and writing have fueled my fire. Yeah.
Oh, I really would encourage you to do the audio thing because, it would give you another platform. That's the thing.
Well, I tried with it before. Reading out my writing is okay. Doesn't like my candle as much as writing words.
I know what you mean. When Sarah and I were doing Swagger and Soul, but me reading out my writing sounded stilted.
Oh, it's all right. I can't be bothered to do what actors tell you to do, stand up and smile, all of that kind of stuff. It's not. I do like audio, I like this podcast, but mainly it's animated because there's 2 of us, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I like doing it so much, because I would be terrible just on my own.
Yeah, I think I've abandoned my idea of the audio of the blog post. But I do like audio. Do I? I don't know. Anyway, what's fueled your fire?
Oh, well, I've got an absolutely blank thing there. I'm afraid I was racing through making my notes while trying to have breakfast and.
Well, in a way, that's good. It's good because you told us lots of things. I led you rather to tell me rather a lot in the first section, and as I already warned you, the client challenge of the week is going to be. There's plenty of fodder in it for you and I. It's going to be quite a long one, I think.
Well, let's get stuck in. Would you like to showcase your business, product or service to between 400 to 600 highly engaged solopreneurs and business owners every week? We can offer a 30-second mid-roll slot and sponsorship branding on our website and in our private Facebook group. Just contact Nicola at nicolacairncross.com for more details. Hi, Nicola here with an audio note. In this section, I mention a gentleman called Kevin Rogers several times. In fact, I was mistaken. It's Kevin Long, and he's from babystepspublishinglimited.com. We will put the correct link to his website in the show notes. So if you want to come over to ownitthepodcast.com, episode 133, then you'll find the right link to Kevin's company.
Yes. Now, I look rather like you today. I've got lots of windows open, so I need to go back. I was shocked last Sunday to receive a weekly email newsletter from a former client and colleague, somebody who's a very good writer, and she was talking about before you rush off to write your life story, it's worth noting that current statistics state that 93% of all books written never sell more than 500 copies. And a book's success is dependent on 5% writing and 95% marketing. Now, I knew she was right about writing's the easy bit. I knew the emphasis was on marketing. And the reason why I picked it up was because I'd had a phone call the day before with one of my clients who is a writer. And I want to talk to you today about the different sorts of writers and authors that I have in my clients and their different business models. Now, the lady that flagged this to me on Sunday says these stats are from 2014, but I don't think them likely to have changed much in that time.
Gone up, if anything.
Yeah, and what it reminded me of is that thing that happened to us when we were first coaches. There was a lady called Jilly something, and she was the naked coach. And I was on a webinar with her once, and she said, this was before we knew anything, relatively speaking, about marketing. So it's about 15 years ago. And I heard her say, I don't really want to do marketing. I just want to coach. And one of my writers pretty much said to me on Saturday, she didn't say this, but she said it in as many words. She pretty much said, I don't really want to do marketing. I just want to write books. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do that in this day and age. I don't think you can do that at all. And I'm reminded of our mutual colleague, Stephanie Hale, who went through the Money Gym, who is, I think she was a publisher at one stage. She's not a publisher anymore. She advises people, authors and writers on how to do well as an author and writer. And she published a book that I read called Celebrity Authors' Secrets, in which she interviewed 12 top-selling famous writers. Did you read that book?
I did, and I was a bit disappointed with it. It didn't give you any...
No, it doesn't. But what it did tell you is that even if you're a celebrity famous author who sells a lot, like Jeffrey Archer, you have to pull to and do your own bloody marketing.
Yeah, and that's that's totally true. I mean, it's all very well saying I don't want to market, I just want to write. Well, that's all very well as long as you don't need anyone to read.
Or actually, if you don't want to make an income from it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So actually, today's client challenge of the week is: I'm an author or a writer, and I want to make an income as an author, as a writer, or a writer. How am I going to do it? And I wanted to talk you through, just as a starter to this, and then we'll come on to the marketing angle later. The different business models that my clients who are writers and authors represent. So distinctly 3 different ways of doing it. So I have a client who's a Hay House author, and I don't know if you've ever been to a Hay House event, Nicola. I suspect not, because it's a bit woo-woo for you.
It's London.
It is also London. It's also global as well. But I'll tell you what they do. They have they are a publishing company, but they have a massive machine that's all about how to shift product. So, for instance, I went to my client's Hay House page this morning. He's got books on there, he's got audios on there, and an online course on there. He's got multiple books, 5, and they're all audios of all the 5. There's only one online course so far, but I'm sure they'll encourage him to write more. And of course, the thing that helps Hay House sell so well, and they've moved increasingly into online stuff, is their physical tour, which is called I Can Do It. And they pay their authors to appear on stage there, because at the back of the room, there is the biggest book buying frenzy you've ever seen in your entire life. If you go to one of those events, forget the ticket price, you are going to leave staggering under the weight of the amount of product you buy, unless you are incredibly disciplined, which I learned to be over the years. But he also told me, so his royalty check, his royalty check is something I could easily live on and would happily live on.
Royalty, can I just ask, his royalty check from his book sales alone, or
from Hay House? From
Hay House, right?
Okay. His fees are not great. When they pay all their writers to appear on the tour in turn, Doreen Virtue and Wayne Dyer, rest his soul, are and were paid enormous sums of money to do that, like the tour headliners. Yeah. My client isn't paid really enough to do that very much, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, a bit more than that, but his royalty check is 5 figures, and in the middle of 5 figures. And I would happily, if I were published by Hay House, I would give up everything else.
Is that per quarter or per year?
A year, but it's a lot of money, Nicola.
Yeah, no, I know. I was just trying to establish, because royalty payments are usually quarterly. That's the thing. Well,
to add it together, I'm familiar with all of his accounts, all of his sources of income for all of his. And the easiest way that he makes his money is by writing for Hay House. Everything else that he does is very labour intensive by comparison, and he actually loves writing. All he's got to do is clear his book, write a book, and then he's part of their publishing machine. Is the point of this story?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we come to the self-publishers on Kindle, there's my client who is orthodoxly published, i.e. a proper old-fashioned, old-world book publishing company offers you a contract, and if you're lucky, an advance, and you earn it back, and you might. But I think they're in the category, frankly, of the 500 copies that my other client gave us last weekend. Sorry, I was a croak this morning.
It's all right. I'll edit your croaks and coughs out.
Thank you. I have taken the time to go and explore the New York fiction bestsellers list of 2016. And all the names on there are people that, in the main, we would recognise. And quite a lot of them are people I buy every year, crime writers. The Lee Childs, the Michael Conleys, the John Grishams, those people, what I would call a holiday novel. But they are also very prolific, which is something else I want to talk about. But the two biggest big sellers on the 2016 fiction list, one of which I started and gave up on, and the other one I haven't read, I've only seen the film. Both have films. The first one is The Girl on the Train, and the second one is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Now, Jojo Moyes' book, uniquely, even amongst all these other famous people, Harlan Coben, David Baldacci, all of James Patterson, Stephen King, Jojo Moyes was the only one on the New York bestseller list last year to be there for 4 weeks running. The rest of them had a week, apart from Girl on the Train, who had 2 weeks, and then another 5 weeks later in the year when the film came out. So if you could get your book sold to make it into a film, you might sell quite a lot of copies of it. But again, we're still not in our territory, the sort of people like you and me and our clients and Daphne, who I'm going to talk about in a minute. If you are self-publishing on Amazon, I don't know if you know this, but Amazon have switched now to paying their authors. They don't pay you when you sell a book anymore. They pay you according to how many pages of the book your reader has read on their Kindle.
Oh, God. So we're now performance-based on people who buy things to get the...
Yeah. So the best way to make money by self-publishing on Amazon is to write something that people read all the way to the end.
Oh, that's just astonishing.
It's quite brutal, isn't it?
It is brutal because, we can't affect whether people actually take action. It's a bit like being a coach, isn't it? You can't.
Well, you can. If you write a book that's readable, people will read it. If you write a book that isn't readable, they won't read it.
No, that's not true. I mean, how many people buy books and never read them? So it must be the same amount as buy courses and never do.
No, but if I buy a book that's readable, I'll read it. So Daphne's book was readable. We read it all the way to the end. Now let's talk about Daphne, because she's self-publishing on Kindle, right? So she's a good example. So this is Daphne Kapsali, who wrote 100 Days of Solitude, which was about going to live in Sifnos in Greece to find out whether she wants to be a writer. Now, she and another man she's introduced me to, and another man I know, have yet another business model, which is what I call being prolific. And like Miranda's mother So Daphne, since that first book, has published 8 books in 2 years. And a man she's introduced me to has written 5 in the same time, and another man I know has written 16 since 2012. Now, what you're into there is multiple streams of income, which was something we used to teach in the Money Gym, which is, whilst each book might not sell much, you ramp it up every time. You ramp up your income potential every time you publish another one. And that, when she published 100 Days of Solitude, she published her second one within a month of that.
I think the thing is that each book is going to build you, if it's good, it's going to build you a slightly larger readership each time. So
absolutely right. Yeah, it expands.
And then people are going to go back if they like one of your books, if they really like one, like, we really liked 100 Days of Solitude. We're more likely to read other things by her.
Yeah, we are. But I want to look at her marketing generally, because she's really good. She writes a newsletter, and I'm going to roll into this section, my Who or What's Impressed. Because I was going to say, who or what's impressed me this week is Daphne's Abundance, because I got a newsletter from her recommending another writer's free first book, which obviously turned out to be an opt-in. And when I opted into his newsletter list, I got not only the first book that he ever wrote for free, but 3 chapters of subsequent books. And Daphne's given away another one of her books and gives away chapters of her books. But also, I'm now in both of these writers' newsletter lists, which is where I want to be, because I'm a reader. So I want to read about their writing, and I want to hear about more of their books, and I want to, I want to read their writing in their newsletters as well. So for me, what strikes me as odd by these self-published authors that I work with who don't want to do marketing is that marketing for a writer is done in the written word. It's just more writing, but in their minds they've got it pigeonholed in a box, marketing brackets, I don't like this.
Yeah,
whereas Daphne just writes to me on Facebook, writes to me in a newsletter, writes to me in a book. Now, her abundance was where the newsletter came and she introduced me to this man called Keith, and now I've got his free book and some free chapters. But today, Keith sent me a newsletter recommending Daphne. So they've done this cross-fertilisation thing. And he also recommends a cookery book, and he also recommends a thing called Authors Cross, which is where they cross-fertilise and recommend each other's books. So, they've got a marketing system going on there. And my favourite authors, of which Daphne is now one, they do a wonderful job on their Facebook pages, both of writing, i.e. using the written word to good advantage, and tempting, i.e. telling you what's coming next, what they're working on now, when the next one coming, when we'll be able to buy it, how we can get a free chapter, blah, blah, blah. What is difficult about that?
I know. It's interesting, isn't it? I wonder whether it's the whole thing about creative people being so reticent to push themselves forward because they're often derided by their fellow creatives in their niche. So, for example, Heather is really quite resistant to doing anything that might seem as self-promoting. I managed to get her over that with her album to some degree, but she really did feel quite hesitant about it. And the reason she did was because she knew there'd be an awful lot of singers going, who does she think she is?
Well, singers have got a particular attitude about that. I had a singing teacher once, and she was terribly snobbish and self-deprecating of anybody that was high profile. But in the writing world, I don't think it's the same thing. So, for instance, one of my clients loves to read and gets regular opportunities to read her work aloud, and indeed is at Hay this week, which is a literary festival. So no, she's not reluctant to market herself in ways that she likes, but to get her to send a newsletter or blog or use her Facebook page, I can't do it.
Really? Well, the thing is then, she's not going to get as many readers, is she?
Well, she has been orthodoxly published before, and she will be orthodoxly published again. But I think the whole point about me mentioning Stephanie's book is that even if you're orthodoxly published, if you leave all the marketing to them, you're a fool.
Well, they won't do it. They simply.
Well, you're only going to get these 500 copies sold, aren't you? You can't make a living doing that.
And publishers are much more likely to sign authors who've got a mailing list, a Twitter following, a Facebook page, a core of readers, because it's risk. It's all about risk, and publishers have to take the risk of, all the expenses of creating your book and doing minimal publishing for your book, marketing for your book. And if it doesn't sell, they're out of pocket. So they'd much rather sign authors who are very active in their own marketing, because they're much more likely to cover their costs and then go on to perhaps recover the advance they've just paid.
I think they understand that. I think it's finding the entree into an area of marketing that they love. So, for instance, I'm the same. I don't resist marketing. I actually love marketing, but I'm not going to involve myself in any kind of marketing I don't like. So I don't do photos. I don't do videos. I don't do talking from the stage. Don't want to do it. Thanks very much. But I'll use the written word and the spoken word endlessly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's true of any marketing, isn't it? You've got to find the one that you're happiest with and most comfortable with. Otherwise, you simply aren't going to do it. We've been talking today about the creative writing, haven't we? Telling stories and...
Well, I said fiction or memoir, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so there's other kinds of writing, isn't there?
There are the ones you were talking about in last week's episode, the one about your concrete expert. Presumably he's got a book about being a concrete expert.
He has. It's called understandingcement.com.
Well, there you go. And your wheatgrass person and your fertility person?
But I think the fertility lady had reports, certainly, and, blogged regularly. And Mr. Wheatgrass didn't do either of those things, but...
Yeah, my three clients are personal development, fiction, and... a sort of crossover between those two. You're thinking of people who we always used to encourage to write a book as a platform for marketing their expertise, are you?
Yeah, because, I accidentally did it with the Money Gym. I wrote 101 emails telling people, the 10 things they needed to know about money and how it worked. And then each topic divided down into 10 subtopics. And I thought it was only when I really got to near the end of it that I realised that I'd actually written probably a book. And then I got to know the lean marketing people, Debbie and Joe, and they took the book and did a good job for me. So since then, I think I did one more with them, which it's interesting because it's such a huge uphill pushing the boulder thing to get a book out. I can understand why people then don't have any energy for marketing it. It's almost easier to start another book than it is to market the book you've got.
Oh, they all want to start the next book.
Yeah.
They all want to start the next book. Yeah, they can't wait to do the writing.
Because there is still this pernicious thing that the next book will be the one that accidentally.
I don't think it's that one. I don't think it's that in my examples. It's that they love writing and they're burgeoning with ideas and they've already got the next idea in mind and they can't wait to start. I mean, because actually writing a book's quite a long job, so you've got to think ahead quite a long way. Going back to this point about. If 93% of all books never sell more than 500 copies, how can we be in the 7% is the question.
Well, there are lots of resources out there if you are an author that is willing to get stuck into the marketing. I've got some resources. And before I go there, though, what about talking about the other kind of... Or were you not going to cover that today about...
Well, it's the same difference, isn't it? You've got to market it either way.
Yes, you have. And there are resources out there. In fact, Mark Anastasi, who remember him from the big multi-event things in London?
I do.
He actually created a book. It was a book about money and wealth and stuff. And I heard that he spent a small fortune on the marketing of that to get it to the bestseller lists. I mean, seriously paid a lot of people to buy lots of copies or to review it. He's paying for endorsements at the front. So he basically went the fully commercial route and spent a lot of money and did get the result he was after, which I don't know at all or not whether that's helped him in his business.
It definitely helped in his business. It won't have made that book make profit.
No, it wouldn't have done. But that's the point. Having a book does make a difference. And I know because I've got several. And
well, it makes a difference to your business. What if your business is books? That's what I wanted to address.
Okay, well,
you see the distinction?
Yes, I totally do. And there is someone who I know, Dan Norris, who I've mentioned many times, who has several books and they've done extremely well. Because without him paying hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, I prefer his model.
Yeah, he's a content machine, this man. I mean, he writes, when he had WP Curve, that was his one way of marketing his business, was writing, super helpful blog posts of great length. And then his books are excellent as well. I mean, his first book, 7 Day Startup, is just awesome. He's actually got a book called Content Machine, which... Well,
actually, before we go to Content Machine, you've just said what we said at the beginning. His first book was awesome. If you write an awesome book, people will read it all the way through.
Well, no, I mean, he still had to market it. It didn't spread itself.
Yeah, but it was high caliber. Which I think is part of the thing.
It makes people more willing to recommend your book if it's good, but but it doesn't make your book spread virally just because it's good.
No, I agree.
Work into it, into letting people know that the book was there and that it would help them. The other thing he does really well, and in fact, people really should think about this, is to create a Facebook group around your book, because it gives readers who just might buy your book somewhere to come without you having to have a website and everything and a membership area. You can just have a closed group for your book. You should have a page for your book, certainly, and you should have a closed group for your book. I did The Science of Getting Rich Online book, and that is the fastest growing group I've ever had. So what I did was I read out the first chapter of it I made a video out of it on YouTube, which gets regular listeners, and I say to people, come and join the private group on Facebook in the description of the YouTube video, and it's there's a constant stream of people joining. Hopefully they're going and buying the book as well.
I think getting rich is something that people search for online, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I very deliberately went out there to make sure that whenever anyone searched for the Science of Getting Rich, they would see the Science of Getting Rich online. I did YouTube SEO on it, which
Yes.
it ranks well on Google. Where there's a constant stream of people listening to that first chapter, me reading it out loud, a constant stream of people joining the group. So if I write anything else of that kind of, or I go, create anything else of that kind of genre, then I've got a ready audience for it. And I share my V-zine into that group. And, our podcast gets shared into that group. So it's building another audience of people, some of which may cross over into my mainstream activities. I certainly couldn't live on my book royalties. Sometimes they, a little check pops in, it's quite nice, but it's never going to be anything. I mean, I would say it might take me out for dinner. That would be about it. But it might change now. The thing about people reading it, I can think that can only be a detriment, really. I can't imagine that.
Not quite. No, I agree with. I agree. I think it makes it harder to make a living as a self-published author on Kindle.
Now,
but I think it makes it even more important that you involve yourself in the marketing. And I think we need another word for marketing, because I think it's the word that puts people off. But if we look at, say, my Hay House client, or Daphne, or my favourite authors, they are all
connecting with their readers,
fully engaged, fully engaged in spreading the word, connecting with their readers, creating great content, being prolific, doing it as a full-time thing, really.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if just being prolific, I think it could, I don't know, just being prolific on its own isn't going to get you anywhere, because
I thought it wasn't at the beginning, but I've changed my mind now. When Tom Evans first laid out this as a business model, I thought, it's too little and it's too slow. But he told me that in 2012, and now we're in 2017, and he's published 16 books. You see what I'm saying? It's one of those hare and tortoise things. Publishing alone prolifically isn't going to do it. No, you've got to be actively engaged with your audience and to love it. It's that thing I said to you a month ago, isn't it, about being on fire with your offerings. And if people don't want it, it doesn't, no skin off your nose, but you don't hide.
There's the other way to do it, which is to go to someone like Kevin Rogers, who has a really brilliant track record of getting people to number one in their category on Amazon. He isn't an author himself, but he's worked with lots of authors. And he was interviewed on, we'll put all these links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Kevin Rogers, he's got, basically you go to him with your idea for a book, a business book, and he will, in fact, I think he does fiction as well, but then you work with him to maximize the production of that book so that it's going to, help him achieve number one in your category for you. And one thing, everyone poo-poos this being number one on Amazon, and a lot of people are very disparaging about it, because it is quite easy to achieve if you have a focused amount of activity within the first week of release. It's all about how many you sell in the first week. I think I've been number one with everything I've published since then, but it doesn't make any difference to sales long term. It just gives you marketing fodder to increase the awareness of your book with.
But if you look at Daphne's page on Amazon, which I did in preparation for this, because she'd also sent this round as a message, she is now, her Amazon bestseller rank is number 481 across everything that is sold in the Kindle store.
Yeah, well, she's a great writer.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. She's also number one for biography and true accounts, subsection women. Number two for non-fiction, religion and spirituality, personal transformation. And number two in non-fiction, travel, continental Europe, Greece. So she's dominating a few. So she's worked out how to do that. She's got lots of reviews. She's asked people for reviews. There's so many strategies in here. I learned quite a lot of them with Ryan Dyson, the number one book system, I think it was called. But I think there's a lovely sweet spot between the commercial systems of getting people to number one and the prolific publishing of your own books and connecting with your clients. I think you want a mix, but you've got to choose the point along that line that's right for you.
Yeah. I'm not. I don't know if I've got a novel in me. I've got an idea for a novel. It's looking like a massive uphill climb to me at the moment. So I'm warming myself up with short stories. which I'm really quite enjoying. And then on the business book front, I don't think I've got another book like The Money Gym in me, but I definitely have got another 100 odd interviews, not all of which are great, but most of which are, that I can turn into, the Mindset, Marketing and Money series. Now, it might well be that one of those stories in one of those books in that series might, suddenly get shared by someone who's got a massive thing, and suddenly all of those will start selling. But so I'm going down the prolific route. And I'm also doing as much marketing as I can before I get bored. That's the problem, is creative people get bored following a system, and marketing is a system. But you did me a real favour by reminding me that if I believe in the content, I've got to make the effort to share that, so that people know that it's there.
Yes, and all of us writers can't just turn out crap.
No, you can't. You have to actually work at it a little bit. Yes.
Yeah. Because rubbish doesn't sell.
No, I'm astonished actually by how, I'm just looking at Daphne's page on Amazon. I'm astonished actually at how many books she has written. Well,
that's 8 in 2 years.
God.
And if you're going to be a professional writer who wants to earn a living from her writing, that's what you've got to do.
Yeah, because some people take 3, 5, 10 years to write their first book, let alone 8.
Absolutely. I think 100 Days of Solitude isn't a very long book, but it's only sold at $3.99. And by the time Amazon have taken their cut, there won't be much there for Daphne. So we need to sell a lot of those.
It's much better to sell on Amazon than to have a traditional publishing deal, though.
Well, you say that. That was before that you fully embraced that they're only going to pay you by the page that's read.
Yeah, only on Kindle, though. See, people are forgetting that people still buy paperbacks. And in fact, I saw something just several weeks ago that said that sales of paperbacks are on the rise again. People are really going back from using a Kindle or a Kindle reader or an iPad.
I think it's tipped back. I don't think they're really going back.
Well, without the figures in front of us, we can't say. But I certainly prefer to read a proper book. I don't enjoy reading on my.
Yeah, and I'm 100% digital. We're completely, no surprise, complete opposites. As ever.
Excellent. Okay, I've got. How are we doing for time? Let me go.
So I take your point, and I think it's a topic for another day, actually, because what you're talking about is other reasons why people might publish a book. And what I'm talking about is, if you are a writer or an author who resists marketing, stop it immediately and find a way to get into it. Find a writer that you like who does sell well and market their stuff well and watch what they're doing and model what they're doing. Or get published by somebody like Hay House. Or even if you do get published by somebody that's a mainstream publisher, know that you are going to have to do a lot of the marketing yourself. So even an orthodox publisher doesn't inure you from marketing. It's the same. The reason why this is relevant to our whole readership, whether or not they have a listenership, whether or not they ever write a book, is because there's nothing we can create in business that sells itself.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, and somehow everyone's got this idea. This is the whole get rich quick overnight success thing, isn't it? Everyone's got this idea that if you just produce something, it's going to be the thing that gets you to the top of the charts, gets you to the top of the bestsellers list, makes you your fortune. It's a pernicious idea that it's just one thing, whereas actually it's not just one thing. It's lots of different things done consistently over time with persistence.
Yeah, and I think that one of the awful moments in my career as a coach is when a new client turns up and says, "I want to make money as a writer." Because I have to tell them that stat. 93% of all books only sell less than 500 copies. And unless they're going to go, so I say, so the majority of the effort is in the marketing after you've finished it. And unless they go, oh, goody, it's going to be an uphill struggle.
Yeah. The other thing not to forget is that a third of the world are auditory, and you really should definitely think about creating an audible version of your book, whether it's you reading it, which is, let me tell you, not the easiest thing on the planet, and the editing's even worse, or you can just pay someone who is an out of work actor with a lovely voice to read it out for you, and get someone in the Philippines to edit it, and there you go, you've got your audible copy ready to go.
I think, one of the writers I really like talked recently about going into the studio to read her own book. And of course, I think what that does do is bring you it's another marketing opportunity. The launch of the Audible book is likely to bring in another chunk of sales. Perhaps even from people who've already bought the book and never read it and thought, oh, perhaps audio would be easier.
Yes, quite. Or about listening in the car. People who are trapped in things like driving for long periods of time, the school run, or gardening or walking the dog. Even people who like to read start to listen to audio when they're doing things like that. So that's
there is an opportunity with some Kindle books that you can switch between audio and where you've read. So I could be reading a book at home and then go in the car and sync, and it would read it to me in the car, and then I could come back home and revert.
Very nice. That's very sophisticated technology. That is. So just to share my 3 resources that I dredged up for you. There is a fantastic blog post on how Dan Norris worked with a very successful book marketer to get his Content Machine book marketed. His book Content Machine is really good anyway about how to market any business with content, written or audio or video. Kevin Rogers is a really nice man who I talked to a lot when I was doing, self-publishing my book on Kindle, because I had a few tech issues. He's the man who will help you get to number 1 if you go to him at the beginning before you've actually published your book. And then the other resource I've got for you is my interview I did with 2 lovely ladies where we talked about how you can use Facebook ads to publish your book. So that's something that can be done. It's really about how to build a marketing machine around your book using Facebook ads, because obviously if you do Facebook ads straight to your book on Amazon, you're never going to know which ads are converting or whatever. So it's much better to get an opt-in first. But there's lots of ways you can use Facebook. Boosted content is another way. You can just boost your content so it gets to everyone who's liked your page. Those resources will all be in the show notes for this show, which is episode 133.
Okay, cool, marvellous. Moving swiftly along, I've already done my Who or What's Impressed, but do you have a word of the week?
Yes, I did. Right, I'm going to fess up here, Judith, that I gave everyone a dud steer last week. My fictive dream, which is how I thought it was spelt, turns out to be fictive. Now, Judith very kindly pointed out, and isn't rubbing my nose in it yet, but it's fictive, isn't it? Fictive.
Yes.
And you found it because you'd never heard of the word?
Because I couldn't understand what on earth you were on about in the episode, but I was too polite to say. Because I understand, because a linguist and a reader and a writer, I understand the roots of every word, and fictive didn't make any sense to me at all. But so I Googled it immediately after the show, and I realised that you'd misheard a B for a V.
Well, that's very annoying. I was misinformed by one of the members of my Right Club. So my word of the week is beauty, because I woke up this morning and I throw open the curtains, and the first thing I see is sunshine, blue sky, and some very, very pink bougainvillea, nice. Which makes my eyes sing. It just makes me think. It makes me feel happy straight away. And then I was hanging out my washing, looking up the mountains, and there's, it's just stunning. And I remembered you saying that you like to make your work surroundings as beautiful as possible.
I do.
Yeah, so I really think that is beauty in our surroundings is quite an important thing. And if you're living somewhere that isn't quite so pretty looking, try and do what Judith does, which is make your work surroundings as nice as possible.
Now, my word is autonomous, which means independent in mind or judgment and self-directed, not controlled by others or by outside forces. And the reason I'm bringing it up today is because I think when moving from having been employed to being self-employed, the ability to learn to think for yourself and be autonomous it becomes increasingly important. Difficult at the beginning, easier as you go along, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and some people go. In fact, I think you mentioned in one of your blog posts recently, the solitude of an entrepreneur. Some people actually go back to work because they want to be told what to do. They don't want
or part of a team.
Yeah, working part of a team. Yeah, some people, don't they?
Yeah. Now, let's skip over project updates, and because we've been quite lengthy in our challenge, and I've done Who or What's Impressed, which was Daphne mentioning Keith and then Keith mentioning Daphne. Tell me who or what's impressed you, because I know you've got one.
Well, I have, yeah. Daniel Priestley never fails to impress me. He arrived in England as a young man with, he'd had a bit of success in Australia, and he arrived in England with a suitcase and a credit card, as he likes to tell his story. He built up one of the most successful event companies in the UK called Triumphant Events, at which I spoke for him several times. Met him loads of times, liked him enormously. All the people on his team were fantastic. And now he's repositioned himself. He's called Dent now, Make a Dent in the Universe. And they've got lots of great events going on all the time, and I've been to several of them. They're fantastic. He's got a selling event on the 23rd of June, which I'm thinking of going to. It's about how to sell properly, nicely, effectively, with integrity, how to sell if you're not comfortable with selling. And I just really seriously think that if you've got any qualms about the sales process or, what selling is, because it's very misunderstood selling, and Judith and I talk about this many times, don't we? But anyway, I just think that would be a really great event. We don't recommend too many events on this show, but I know that would be well worth anyone's day out on the 20th.
And if you or anybody goes, you could pop into the Facebook group and tell us what you learned.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're putting a link for this in the. It's not an affiliate link. We're not getting paid to do this. So we'll put a link for it in the show notes.
Cool.
Okay, that's us done.
It is.
We're all caught up.
Now, next week, we're not on Thursday, we're on Tuesday.
Yes, good, because I haven't moved to the souvlaki shop then.
You will or you won't have moved to
the
souvlaki
I won't have moved yet, so that's good.
Move, marvellous. See you at Tuesday at home.
Okay, pre-souvlaki shop.
Yes, okay.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.